Jewish tradition that says, Machloket l'shem shamayim, sofo lehikayim, which basically means an argument which is for the sake of heaven is destined to last for eternity, forever. This is that kind of debate. It goes back in time, not centuries, but thousands of years. We really don't know. Historians, archaeologists have not been able to locate the genesis of this debate. This is the reason why we felt that the time has finally come in this apocalyptic age to take the two greatest Jewish rabbis, and they really are, Dershowitz and Steven Pinker, and they need very little introduction on the factual level. What's important for our purposes is they're going to resolve what has been a perennial issue. The debate will take place on several levels. On one level, and obviously you come here with it's already been announced that food and the gross material level of this debate, Hamantash is a food, Latke is a food, but actually it's on a much deeper level. It also refers to two narratives. One narrative has very much to do with an ancient Jewish holiday that deals with material struggle, and that's Hanukkah. And for that reason, Steven Pinker, I believe, Professor Pinker, you are defending the Latke. So that is this narrative. And so we will elevate that material narrative to a metaphysical level. In fact, the distinction between the body and the mind will be dissolved in the course of this debate. And I do have to quote one thing from Stephen's book, The Blank Slate, which I'm sure most of the people in this room have read, but there's a poem in here that's about a Latke that probably most of you didn't notice. That's not assigned in his courses. But for those of you who want to check this out, it's on page 423. The Latke is wider than the sky. For put them side by side, the one the other will contain with ease, and you beside. The Latke is deeper than the sea. For hold it, blue to blue, the one the other will absorb. And sponge, I can't go on. It's another verse. And on the other side, of course, we have Alan Dershowitz, who is the world's most passionate and effective defender of human rights. His most recent book, The Case for Apartheid. Realizing what the dream of his narrative is. His narrative is the Purim story, and there the issue is much more about the struggle between good and evil. It's a moral discussion. So Alan won't necessarily be dealing with the metaphysical, but he will very much be dealing with the struggle between good and evil. And he will be presented from the profoundly Jewish point of view, presented in that narrative, which is the absence of God. Everything is relative. I learned that from Alan. And so, with no further ado, I introduce Alan Dershowitz on behalf of the Hamantash.
Thank you, and may it please the court. The Hamantash is also representative of charity, of giving. Hamantash is Purim. In Purim we give. In Hanukkah we take. It's gifts. Hanukkah is a holiday of greed and grease. The current president of Iran, as you all know, has also convened an international conference of scholars to prove that Haman's plot against the Jews was a myth. Professors David Duke and Norman Finkelstein, two eminent scholars of note and world-class putzes, are presenting papers on how the greedy Jews have misused the mythical threat against Haman to justify the monopoly they have obtained over the Hamantash and Gregor trade. They will be carried, Finkelstein and David Duke, they will be carried to the event on the shoulders of the entire and the Ture Karta Nut Cult, otherwise known as Jews for Jihad. All 7 of them. Speaking of world-class putzes. So I say in the interest of Pikuach Nefesh, in the interest of saving lives, we must ban the cholesterol-laden latke. As you know, Prince Charles has demanded the banning of the greasy McDonald's hamburger, and in the spirit of that great man, I demand the banning of the greasy Hanukkah latke. It will also reduce our oil dependence. We should start a 9-step program to break the cycle of addiction to the latke. My understanding is that the only halachic justification for why the latke is even eaten on Hanukkah is to remember that the enemy was Greece, hence the food. Greece. But as Rav Papa, here I tell the truth, who the Talmud described as having a penis the size of a Carpathian jug, really, check it with your Talmud teacher. Says that Rav Papa argued it is a weak reason for eating so unhealthy a food. Even the Israelis have banned the latke, substituting instead suganiot, a dessert food that closely resembles the Hamantash. So, 3 cheers for the 3-cornered hat, and a round of Gregor noise for the greasy latke. Happy power!
My field of specialization is language, and in particular, I've studied the interaction of language and human nature in my book, The Language Instinct. I would like to bring those areas of expertise to bear tonight on the issue that energizes all of us, and I'm going to present a number of arguments that I will soon summarize in my forthcoming book, The Why latkes are compatible with universal grammar and human nature. Indeed, more compatible with universal grammar and human nature than Hamantash. My first argument. How do you refer to them when you're having more than one? Well, in the case of the latke, it's straightforward. One latke, many latkes. This is what's known as a regular compare dog dogs, pony ponies, and so on. It submits to the rule to form the plural add s. It's an elegant process, it's rule-governed, it's logical, it's creative. Indeed, I would maintain that it's a manifestation of our innate universal grammar. And this was demonstrated here at Harvard in a famous experiment known to every psycholinguistic student, known as the WUG test. You show children a little bird and you say, this is a WUG. Then you show 2 of them, you say, now there is another one, there are 2 of them, there are 2. And any child can fill in the blank by saying WUGs, even though they have never heard that word before from their parents, showing that they must have applied a mental rule creatively. Now one could easily adapt this to the latke test. This is a latke. Now there is another one, there are 2 of them, there are 2. Latkes. Easy. Now, what would happen if you constructed a Hamantash text? There is a Hamantash. Now there is another one. There are 2 of them. There are 2 Hamantaschen. This is what is known as an irregular plural. Like man, mouse, mice, goose, geese, and there are only 3 other plurals in the entirety of the English language that use en, and 2 of them are rather marginal. We've got ox, oxen. Now, when was the last time you actually used the word oxen? Brother, brethren. Would any of you with 2 male siblings say, I've got 2 brethren? And then there is child, children. Now, there's a strong case to be made against irregular plurals. First of all, they're hard to work. Children, any of you who spend time with a child know that they make errors like tooths and mouses. Here we have a similar error from the verb system where a boy says, "Mommy, Dolly hitted me." The mother says, "Dolly hit me." And he says, "You too? Boy, she's in trouble." Also, even in adulthood, no one knows what irregular plurals are. Cactuses or cacti, that could be another debate, maybe at the University of New Mexico. Indexes or indices. Alumni, alumna, alumnae, alumnuses, or alumni. In Toronto, there's a team that can't even get the irregular plurals. Jerseys. And here's a linguistic item that I submit for your consideration. You might say, "We're having Julia Child and her husband over for dinner. You know, the children are really great boys." There's something wrong with all this. Now you might say, is this a laughing matter? Does anyone really care about the difference between regular and irregular plurals? Well, I read to you a news item from the New Republic that came out a few years ago. December 12, 1994 to be exact. In Las Vegas, the Flying Elvi sued the Flying Elvises for trademark theft. Both organizations leap from airplanes in Elvis Presley late-period costumes and dance and pretend to sing upon landing. This went to court. The Flying Elvi lost, and I hear they have retained Professor Dershowitz for their appeal. But this is the kind of trouble you get into with irregular plurals. Now, irregular plurals are silly. There's just no two ways about it. This is from Newsweek magazine. The Supreme Court now has 7 brethren and 2 sistren. That is a low form of humor. I spent 21 years at MIT. There was a computer there called the VAX, made by Digital Equipment. The plural that they used over there was vaccine. They also referred to boxin, soxin, Macintashen. This is MIT humor, and trust me, it can get ugly. And how many of you remember Alan Sherman? Hello, Mata, hello, Fada, here I am at Camp Granada. Important part of my childhood. Well, in one of his lesser-known songs called One Hippopotami, he sang, "One hippopotami cannot get on a bus because one hippopotami is 2 hippopotamus. And if you have 2 goose, that makes 1 geese. A pair of mouse is mice, a pair of moose is niece." This is the kind of low humor that irregular plurals generate. Now, worst of all, this is the end of my first argument, irregular plurals encourage people to mess up the language. Now, I briefly glossed over the issue of children. Unlike oxen and brethren, that's a word that people actually use. But they don't realize what they're doing when they use that word, because here is the historical derivation. Another irregular plural in Old English was er. The plural of chilled was childer. But then people couldn't quite figure it out. It was too irregular. They thought that the singular was childer, and they added another irregular plural to that, giving us children. And if any of you ever speak to people acquiring English as a second language, you may have heard errors like children's. 3 plurals. What's next? Children's? It's just not transparent enough. Now, is this a real problem in the present case under consideration, Hamantash? Well, here is evidence that it is, and I encourage you to go home now and try this at home. Try Googling Hamantashes and, worst of all, Hamantashens, just like children. You will find things like in the very review of the book, The Latke-Hamentaschen Debate on Amazon.com. Their review ends like both Latke's and Hamantashes, which I highlight here in fuchsia. Hamantashes. The book is best appreciated in moderate servings. And the Daily Princetonian, who had their own version of the debate, said, debating the best Jewish holiday treat, Hamantashens or Latkes. Well, this may be an argument for the superiority of Harvard over Princeton, at least we can keep track of it. But this is the kind of confusion it invites. Now, can the Hamantashen plural crisis be solved? There is, I admit, a cheap band-aid quick fix, which is to make it regular, Hamantashes. The problem there, that is my reaction to Hamantashes. The reason is that people don't like words that end in sh have a regular plural. And I have a collection of errors from speech and writing in which nouns that end in sh just resist having a regular plural attached to them. For example, what is the plural of prefrosh, someone who is not yet a freshman? Prefroshes? Prefrosh? Prefroshen? This is from the Boston Globe. How to adjust window sash. They just couldn't figure out whether to use the singular order. So in sum, neither the irregular nor the regular plural of Hamantash is viable. One cannot endorse a food item that leaves its eaters unsure about how to refer to eating for them. Latkes, no problem. The second argument. The names for the fillings of Hamantaschen, I will show you, are deeply problematic. Now, what is that stuff beside Hamantaschen? Well, there are three alternatives. There are prunes, there is poppy seed, and there are various abominations. Such as jam, apricots, raspberries, and so on. And why do I say they're abominations? Because when I grew up, there were only two kinds of Hamantaschen, and it is a well-known principle of intellectual argumentation that one can look with disdain upon any innovation that wasn't around when you were a child. So I am going to remove the abomination from the debate and concentrate only on the prune filling and the poppy seed filling. Let's begin with the deep, disturbing secret behind Hamantaschen. Prunes. Prunes make people think of what their bubbies take as a drug to cure constipation. Now, how many of you actually eat prunes? When I think of prunes, I think of being regular, going to the bathroom, of X-lax, and so on. Now, this has posed a problem, needless to say, for the prune industry. And the prune industry is perhaps today's most vocal defenders of the Worfian hypothesis in language, that language determines thought. Their cheap solution is, since people associate prunes with constipation and buddies, they have actually rebranded them as dried plums. It's true, you can go to www.californiadriedplums.com, where I got this logo. To me, this smacks of Orwellian manipulation of language. The strong Worfian linguistic determinism hypothesis has been refuted. A dried plum is still a prune. A prune by any other name will make you go to the bathroom as much. Well, now I turn to poppy seeds. Well, we've got a linguistic problem here. First of all, what is the correct technical term for ground up poppy seeds mixed with sugar that are used to fill Hamantaschen? Well, the correct name, as everyone knows, is mun, but no one knows how to spell it. M-O-O-N, that seems to refer to the Reverend of the Unification Church, the heavenly body that circles the earth, the act of exposing your derriere, gestures of contempt, so it can't be M-O-O-N. M-U-N, well, that would be mun, not mun, it rhymes with sun and bun and so on. You can't respect a food whose main ingredient no one knows how to spell. Now, there is also a moral problem. Now, you might ask, is it appropriate to stoop to scoring cheap moralistic points to defend something as trivial as a favorite food? And the answer is, yeah, I think I'll do it. Hamantaschen with poppy seed filling require the growing of poppies, by definition. The poppy industry supports drugs, terrorism, hence, I want you to sign the petition. Harvard University. Hamantaschen with poppy seed filling. Third argument for the superiority of Latkes. And this now I turn from language to human nature. Latkes are part of human nature. They are evolutionary adaptation. Why are they an evolutionary adaptation? Well, I believe my adversary has already conceded that Latkes have more calories than Hamantaschen, especially with sour cream. Therefore, in times of famine, very common in our evolutionary ancestors, those who chose Latkes and sour cream over Hamantaschen were more likely to survive in the universe. They have passed on the genes for Latke preference to us today. Now, I believe this even leads to a new view of human evolution. We have here the primitive, brutish Neanderthal man, followed by the first human to use primitive tools, Peking man, and finally we come to modern humans as Latke man. And to those who are skeptical that there could be such a thing as a gene for preferring Latkes, well, my colleagues at Harvard Medical School reported an amazing discovery. You see it right over here, the gene for Latke preference. The fourth argument. Latkes are universal with, as linguists would acknowledge, parametric variation from culture to culture. The US has its hash browns, France has its galette, Ireland has box tea. This is based on extensive research. That is, I typed Wikipedia potato pancake into my computer. Sweden has something called the Rarakor, Switzerland has the Rusti, Peru has the Paparayena, Poland has the Platski Węgierski, Korea has the Kamkajun. Now that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different cultures that have potato pancakes, and that's universal enough for me. How many cultures have Hamantash? I ask you. Summary for the arguments of the superiority of Latkes over Hamantash. 1, when you're eating more than one, the plural of Latke is elegant and logical. The plural of Hamantash is deeply problematic. 2, whether it be prune or poppy seed, the name for the filling of Hamantaschen has fatal orthographic and connotative flaws. 3, Latkes are an evolutionary adaptation. 4, Latkes are a human universal. And 5, Hamantaschen support terrorism and violence. Sign the divestiture petition today. Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt. If you have an empty seat next to you, please raise your hand. Or empty seats by you. If you're in the back of the room or on the side, please find one of those seats. We cannot have people standing in the back or the side because it's a Latke-Hamentaschen kind of emergency with that. So please move in, front, sides. Please move in so you can find an empty seat. Thanks so much.
With no further ado, it is time for the rebuttal.
My distinguished opponent, one of the world's most distinguished linguists, seems linguistically limited by arguing that there's a plural problem for the word Hamantash, failing to understand that the word Hamantash is not an English word. It is a Yiddish word. And in Yiddish, there's a perfect plural. Not only that, but the Israelis have figured out a way of doing it, Aznei Haman. That's an easy plural that represents the universal language and more pluralistic language. Now, I'm prepared to concede that there are many, many variations on the Latke, and there is only one culture that has the Hamantash. But is that an argument against the Hamantash? We are the chosen people. And dangerous as it is to tread into Professor Pinker's chosen area of evolution, I will do it. What he refers to as abominations, jelly and chocolate, are the essence of evolution. It's diversity, and diversity encourages evolution. And the Hamantash has evolved over time and has adapted to the reality. And it may be that there was a time when our big problem was starvation. Today, our problem is obesity. And whether or not the Latke was adapted to a time when we were thin and trim, as you are, today it is far more adaptive to the problem that I have of overeating. So, I think the linguistic problems will continue. And by the way, while we're solving these linguistic problems, my daughter and I have had this big argument over the years. What is the singular of M&M? If you have just one of them, do you just have an M? Or do you have one M&M? it's a variation of the hippopotami paradox, which we'll hear more of, I'm sure, today. And so the case for the Hamantash remains strong. I think we should have probably, I've always been against divestiture when it's unique and singles out only one country. And so I think if we have divestiture against the poppy seed and the poppy seed growers, we must have divestiture against oil and grease. So there will be two petitions outside. Each will cancel the other out. And so this debate will continue for eternity, but my time is now over. Thank you.
I would like to respond to the entirely unfounded charge that the latke requires grease, is unhealthy, and contributes to the nation's obesity crisis. Now, I noticed that Alan and I, despite our many similarities in background, there was one very big difference in background. Alan was brought up Orthodox, I was brought up Reform. Of course, in Reform Judaism, you alter traditions over time in conformity with the Jewish Enlightenment, with changing standards. And when I make latkes, I make it with monounsaturated olive oil. On the side, I have, rather than sour cream, I have non-fat yogurt. And afterwards, I wash it down with a couple of Lipitor. Highly recommend also with Big Macs, it works with lots of things. Now, one other argument. Now, Alan brought up the fact that the shape of the Hamantash is triangular. Now, I wouldn't go there. Because anyone who writes books of popular science will then will get a carload of letters from the triangle people. Now, there are people, this is true, there are people out there who have discovered the secret to everything in the universe, which is that everything comes in threes. They will point out proton, neutron, electron, solid, liquid, gas, the Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost, Huey, Dewey, and Louie. And the way you recognize, this is something well known among scientists, that when you get one of these manuscripts from one of these people who believe that everything comes in threes, they have a triangle on the cover. Now, the Hamantash encourages this kind of conspiracy theory, and I think it is an embarrassment. Now, admittedly, you could imagine pentagonal, Hamantash, quadrilateral, octagonal, and so on, but then would they be Hamantashen? Completely unclear. But with that, I think I'd better rest my case.
Although this argument has been going on for millennia, this evening we have to resolve it. It has to be resolved in the here and now. And to that end, we will open the floor up and invite your participation. So please help us resolve this. Raise questions to either expert or both. Rev. Allen, Rev. Stephen. Raise your hands.
As you know, I only take hostile questions. It doesn't have to be a question, it could be a comment.
I'd like to address the question to both arguers. Is there any possibility of compromise? Might we put fill the latke with something special and fold it over and so
This is why I came to Harvard. Quality of the students' minds. But then would we then have to cancel the debate next year?
No, next year we have Professor Mnuchin, who is in the negotiation project, come and see if he can negotiate a resolution. Unlikely. Yeah.
How do you respond to the claim that Hamantash supports terrorism?
And there's something wrong with that? No, look, what supports terrorism? War, dependence on oil, dependence on, Middle East oil, leaving America dry, leaving America in the hands of Iranian control of the oil, or a few obscure poor people who are growing poppy somewhere in Colombia or in Afghanistan. The difference in the poor farmers who will be put out of business with his divestiture petition compared to who's going to get put out of business with mine, the Saudi Arabian royal family.
One of your arguments for Jewish exceptionalism.
Right.
Why is that a good thing?
I did not argue that Jewish exceptionalism is a good thing. I just argued that Jewish exceptionalism, the chosen people, is a concept of Judaism consistent with the uniqueness of the Hamantash. If you reject the uniqueness of Jews, then you can go for the common cliche of potatoes served in every culture, equally greasy, equally unhealthy, and totally ununique. Whether or not Jews are unique, don't you want to be unique?
Yes, I'd like to hear a little bit about the story of Hanukkah and the Maccabees and whether that helps or hurts both of your arguments.
He's a Reformed Jew. He doesn't know this.
That's totally unfair. As Uniform Jews, Hanukkah is the holiday in which you put up a tree. Hang the stockings over the fireplace.
How do you account for the rising prevalence of biofuel-powered latkes that is coming out of the soybean oil industry, or even olive oil, as opposed to the petro-latke?
I have one word response. That! The latke, I have to admit, I am addicted to latkes. I would have 20 less pounds on me if not for the latke. I love the latke myself, personally, but it's bad for me. I know that. And the latke made with soybean oil, with yogurt, ugh, it's just not worth the calories.
Have you ever accounted for the fact that drug dealers might like Hamantaschen more because they're baked rather than fried?
Well, I don't know. I've never heard of anyone mainlining. One mainlining would be, although maybe we should just sort of keep it within these four walls. I imagine we get a really good hit that way. One lining.
There's a head back there now.
As a Reformed Jew, you believe that change over time is good. Then wouldn't the jelly filling be a symbol of progress rather than an abomination?
No, because they didn't have it when I was a child.
The Bible uses the same word, abomination, for both eating lobster and being gay. So I don't take it too seriously. The concept of an abomination, since I favor both.
My opponent just favored eating gay lobsters. It's kind of like the old bumper sticker, nuke the whales.
Is there a grammatical problem, or I'm not getting something? The Hamantaschen means Haman's ears.
No, Hamantash means Haman's hat. Osnei Haman, which is the Israeli version of ear. And I don't believe in eating parts of people's bodies.
How many hats did you have? I mean, You could eat one and then be happy with it.
That's right.
So if you have more than one, then...
I don't want more than one. Hamantash a day, keeps the doctor away, a little wine, and I don't like Osnei Haman because I don't like the concept of eating body parts of people. It's enough they make us eat our hearts out. We don't want to eat their ears back. So I like Hamantash. The hat is much better.
Upon resolution of this in your favor, how will we hold liable whoever has opposed the Latke upon us for all the health problems caused over the years?
Well, I have a friend who's a class action lawyer, and I'm thinking seriously of bringing a lawsuit, and unfortunately you would have to name Professor Pinker as an encourager and inciter of the mass tort of eating latkes. And look, if you consume McDonald's for making kids fat, think about what you can do to the latke.
That reminds me of a lawyer joke. Of why psychologists stopped using rats as experimental animals and started using lawyers. Maybe I better tell it afterwards.
There were more of them, number one.
You never run out of lawyers.
And
There's
never any danger that you're going to think they're so cute you won't do something.
You'll never become attached to your experimental subjects. Third is, there's some things that a rat just won't do.
I'd have to dispute this argument with regards to the evolutionary adaptation, because it seems that with recent medical evidence, perhaps, fat is not the real source. I mean, according to the Atkins diet, at least, it seems that it's much easier to get fat, in fact, from eating Hamantaschen rather than eating latkes. So what if perhaps it comes out that the real way to gain weight and survive during difficult conditions is, in fact, to consume Hamantaschen? Would then you support the consumption of that product and abandon your original thesis?
Well, the great advantage of evolutionary hypotheses is, according to their critics, is that you can always accommodate any evidence. So I'll think about how to incorporate that and keep it nice and unfalsifiable.
Along the lines of the evolutionary argument, are you putting the fallacy of what is ought to be?
Well, I'm trying to appeal to the universal appeal of the latke as part of human nature, a reason that one should, in celebrating our humanity and kind of doling out whatever bullshit I can. Keep it going as long as possible. Maybe another question.
Professor Pinker, Professor Dershowitz mentioned that the addictive power of the latke. How would you respond to the allegation that, similar to like tobacco companies, the oil and potato companies are manipulating Americans to give them an addictive product to encourage more business in their favor?
Right. Well, I am utterly opposed to the nanny state. I believe in individual choices and that people should take individual responsibility, and I am opposed to the kind of imposition of restrictions of choice by an increasingly fascist state that tries to insert itself in private decisions like how many latkes to eat.
But would you favor truth in latke labeling? Every latke, the word lat and then cholesterol, has to appear so that people can make informed choices.
Well, they can be informed. I think it would make no difference because the latke is so self-evidently delicious.
That's what the cigarette manufacturers say. Any more? Oh, we had a couple more. Yeah.
How would you respond to the concept that a latke is more useful than a hamantash? I mean, a latke is a potato pancake, so it's breakfast food.
Right.
And it's a side dish for lunch or dinner.
Right.
But a hamantaschen is a cookie. It's a dessert. You can only eat it for dessert.
Well, first of all, what's wrong with dessert? Life's short. Eat dessert first. Hamantash, basically, as my distinguished opponent said, can include any form of abomination. You might have a meat filter, meal. You can have a Hamantash appetizer. I mean, there are no limits to how a Hamantash can be used.
However, we all know the great Yiddish riposte to any hypothetical. If someone says, if such and such, then so and so would happen. You say, yes, but if my bubby had balls, she'd be my Zadie.
My bubby had balls. You should. David Ben-Gurion said, he looked at his cabinet and he pointed to Golda Meir and said, "You're the only one in my cabinet with balls." And you know what the word for balls is in Israel? Beit sin. And Beit sin means eggs. So it's not a gender-free term.
I said before that this debate has been going on indefinitely, and it must be resolved tonight. And so I'm going to turn to our panel, and our panel will determine the outcome of this. As was mentioned before, there is no such thing as a compromise on issues of absolute value and concern. So could you close the door back there? The officers close the door. This is serious. And is the Crimson here? I'll have to ask the Crimson to leave. Please leave. Okay, well, we're going to pass out the ballots.
What if the voice of God was suddenly come down, like it did in that famous story in the Talmud of the coal?
Yeah, and the answer to that is, Lo b'shamayim, he is not in heaven. So, as we said before, that this is an argument for the sake of heaven, but it cannot be resolved by heaven. It can only be resolved by the panel. You are the panel.
It's too bad I had hired Charlton Heston.
So we're going to do this in a very scientific way. The ballots aren't here, so we're going to do it in a very scientific way. We're going to do it by sound. And so I'm going to say, and I'm going to invite the panel, which is every single person in the room, other than the Crimson, all in favor. And this is sound, so you have to really, and we've got a sound meter here. All in favor of the Hamantaschen. Of the Latke. It's resolved.